This is a tutorial on how to loom knit in Alpaca. This is generally what it looks like. You'll need a 12 peg loom to do this project. And you'll need two kinds of yarn. I used a Lion's brand Homespun yarn, which is my textured yarn, and I got the thicker size, the super bulky rather than just the bulky, so it's going to be the 6 rather than the 5. And I also was using a Lion's brand, the Jiffy Thick and Quick yarn for my smooth yarn. And I went ahead and done a drawstring cast on of all 12 pegs, and I've done it flat, and I have E-wrapped 12 pegs for 5 rows. So what I'm going to do is start off doing the row that has the ears. So you want to E-wrap 3 to start. Then you're going to need to change to the smooth colored yarn, and make sure that you don't cut your textured yarn. You'll be picking it back up. So go ahead and tie the smooth colored yarn in. Now we're going to do something a little strange. We're going to knit rather than E-wrap, what we've been doing. You're going to knit 2, and you're going to be working between these 2 pegs. So you're going to knit, flat knit 2. Then you're going to increase 1 where you wrap the yarn around the next peg. Then you're going to knit 2 again. And you're going to wrap the yarn around the next peg. And then you're going to knit 3. And you're going to make sure to only knit that. Do not touch the base loop, because you'll connect the middle of the ear with your head. Okay, so you want to knit 4 for 3 rows. So here's row 1. Remember, don't touch the original loop on those increased pegs. And here's 2. And here's 3. Okay, then you want to knit 3. Then you want to knit 2 pegs in the middle for 3 rows. Here's row 1. And row 2. Row 3. And then you're going to knit 3. 2, 3. And you're going to knit 4 for 3 rows. So this is 1, 2, and 3. Then you're going to decrease by 1 on each side get back down to the original 2 loops on those 2 pegs, and then you're going to knit 3 rows. So here's row 1. And 2. And 3. And you've just completed your first ear. Keep a note, you'll be repeating this for the second ear. And you can do this next section if you feel comfortable with it. You can skip it and just sew the ears up later. But I'm going to bring my original loops back on, following the line from the previous peg. And I've showed this in several of the newer videos on how to go about this. It's a little harder to show because the textured yarn makes it difficult to see your original loops. But this keeps you from having to really sew up the ears. And one of the reasons why I chose to knit the ears rather than E-wrap was to allow it to have more shape, but not be too big. Okay, now you're going to pick back up on your textured yarn and you're going to E-wrap those 2. And then you're going to E-wrap the next 2, which will give you the space between your ears. And then you're going to pick back up your smooth yarn and you're going to repeat exactly what we just did with the first ear and the next 2 pegs. So repeat on the ear, on the next 2 pegs. Then after you repeat the ear, E-wrap back to the other side, which is 3 more. And then you'll want to E-wrap a straight row after you finish this row. So finish up the row, and then you want to E-wrap a straight row, a single straight row. So go ahead and pause the video and complete that. Now this is what you should have: 2 ears and a single row that you've E-wrapped. Now we want to do the puff part on the head, so you want to E-wrap 9 and stop. The puffy part around the face, which looks more like a hairdo half the time, we're fixing to do that section. Which is going to be a series of wrap and turns. So wrap and turn the next peg, and then you want to E-wrap 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then wrap and turn the next peg, and then you want to E-wrap 3. 1, 2, 3. Wrap and turn the next peg, and E-wrap 2. Wrap and turn the next peg, and E-wrap 2. Then we're going to start adding the wrap and turn pegs back in slowly. So E-wrap 3. 1, 2, 3. And E-wrap 4. And E-wrap 5. then E-wrap 9. And that completes that row, and you should have a nice puff spot for the face to give it looks like a little hairdo or little bangs. And there you can see what you've got. So now what we want to do is we want to E-wrap 12. I would suggest if you want to do a darker color alpaca that you double your strands of your textured yarn rather than using a single strand, because you will be able to kind of see the filling through it, but because this is light colored you won't notice it. Go ahead and cut the textured yarn and attach the smooth yarn, and we'll start working the face area in and then work in the snout. So go ahead and change to the smooth texture yarn. And what you want to do is E-wrap 12. Then you want to do an internal decrease from 12 pegs to 6 pegs, and this is how I do it. I pick up pegs on one half, so I pick up 5 loops, and then I place 2 loops on each peg, which should decrease it by 3 on this side. Now this is my personal preference of doing it on the smaller looms, but I tend to do it different on the big ones. But on the smaller one, I just go ahead and pick up the 5 loops and then place 2 on the new last 3. So there's that one, and that one, and that one. And now you should have 2 loops on all your pegs. And you should be now down to 6 loops. Now you want to E-wrap those 6 pegs now, and you've just created your snout area. And then you want to E-wrap 6 pegs again. Now we're going to create some nostrils, so go ahead and E-wrap 2, and then you want to knit 1 3 times. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Then you want to knit the next one 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then you want to E-wrap 2 pegs. Now you want to E-wrap 6. And then you want to snip the end and do a drawstring cast off. And when I do this, I like to start on the opposite end of where the strand is coming from. My personal preference. You don't have to. Go ahead and do a drawstring cast off. And then you want to sew up the snout and then close the back of the head off. If you didn't bring the original loops back on the ears, you'll need to sew them up. But as you can kind of see, you have the little puff area on the face. Go ahead and sew that snout up. And I sew it a little past the smooth yarn up into the textured yarn a little, but not all the way. Then you'll tie it off, and then go ahead and close the back of the head off and stuff the head. And then we're going to move on to the body. What I've done is I've gone ahead and done a drawstring cast on circularly, and then I've E-wrapped 3 rows and purled 1 row. And again, if this is what seems a little too fast, go ahead and go to my blog where the written pattern is, and I'll tell you the exact rows to do. Okay, now you want to E-wrap 5, and we're going to start on the tail row. And kind of like the ear, but we're going to extend this a little bit because our tails are bigger, we're actually going to E-wrap. So go ahead and E-wrap 2, and then increase 1, and E-wrap 2, and increase 1, E-wrap 3, there's your third, making sure not to toss that original loop back over. Okay, now you want to E-wrap 4 for 5 rows. And do your best, this is going to be difficult, to make sure you don't touch that original loop that's on those increased pegs. So there's row 1, row 2. And row 3. And row 4. Excuse me, it's 4 rows, I'm sorry, I'll have to go back in and change that. E-wrap 3, then E-wrap 2 for 3 rows. Two, 3, then E-wrap 3, then E-wrap 4, row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, now you want to decrease by 1 on each side to get back down to the original 2 loops, and then you're going to E-wrap 2 for 3 rows. So 1, 2, and 3. Now you'll want to bring the original loops back. You can skip this part if you like, but you'll have to sew up the tail later. So there's your tail, and you want to bring your original loops back. And the best way to do that is to follow the previous pegs to follow the line to find the original loops. It can be difficult to find on the textured yarn, so if you don't feel comfortable with this step, feel free to sew the tail up after you get done with the body. And I like to toss that bottom loop over. Okay, and now you want to E-wrap 5 back to the beginning, and that covers your tail. And now you want to E-wrap 12 for 7 rows. This is what you should have so far after you've done your 7 rows. Now you want to E-wrap 6, and we're going to start working flat, and we're going to do the bend area in the body so that the neck goes straight up here in just a second. So that's what we're fixing to work on. So you're going to go back the direction you came, and you're going to E-wrap 8 pegs. Excuse me, you're going to E-wrap 9. I do apologize. I do this at 1 o'clock in the morning. So wrap and turn, and E-wrap 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you want to wrap and turn the next peg, and then you want to E-wrap 5. Stopping just before the last E-wrap, meaning your last wrap and turn. Okay, so you want to wrap and turn and E-wrap 4. Wrap and turn and E-wrap 3. Wrap and turn and E-wrap 2. Wrap and turn and E-wrap 2. And we're going to start adding our wrap and turn pegs back in, so E-wrap 3. Then E-wrap 4. Then E-wrap 5. E-wrap 6. E-wrap 7. And now you want to E-wrap 9 back to the other side. Okay, you want to decrease by 2 on each end, so go ahead and pick up 3 loops and place 2 loops on the last 2 pegs on that side. So there's one, and this is going to really put a distinctive movement from the body to the neck. You're going to get a real nice angle. So go ahead and lift up your 3 on the other side to decrease by 2 and place 2 loops on those last 2 pegs. Now you want to E-wrap 8 for 9 rows, and then you'll do a cast off. So you'll want to E-wrap 8 for 9 rows and do a cast off. Go ahead and pause the video to complete those 8 rows and then cast off. Here's what your body is going to look like, and we want to sew up our neck. So there's your opening on your neck. You want to sew it up. Leave the small hole at the top of the neck for the head to be sewn onto. So we're just going to sew up the length of the neck because it's open. And because it's textured, you will not be able to see the seam. And then you'll want to snip the end and tuck that end into the body. And I haven't closed up the back end because I'm going to stuff all my polyfill from the back end, and then I'll close up the back end of the body. I find that's the easiest way to go about it. So go ahead and stuff the body, and then you'll want to close up and start on the legs. And I'm not actually going to physically show how you do the legs. I'm going to actually kind of guide you through. I started off with my smooth yarn and I drawstring cast on them circularly, and I knitted 3 rows, purled 1 row, and knitted 3 rows. Then I changed color to the textured yarn and purled 1 row. Now if you don't like how fat the legs are, you can choose to flatten knit the legs if you'd like rather than E-wrap, but you want to E-wrap or knit 9 rows. You might want to knit more rows, but do a regular cast off and then stuff, and you'll want to make 4 of those. So this is what it should have after it's assembled, but we're going to kind of go through how to assemble. With the head, you want to line the very back of the head up with the tail, and then you want to line the nose up with the front center. And then to sew the legs on, you want to find those 2 columns that weren't wrapped in turn, and there's the base of them, and then you want to sew the legs from that base back on each side, and then you want to follow that line all the way back to that purled row on the back end and sew the back leg from the purled row forward, and you want to do that on both sides, and that'll sew your legs on. And again, if you're going to do a darker colored alpaca, I would suggest using 2 strands rather than 1 strand of the textured yarn, because you will be able to see some of the polyfil. And I've used some melted pony beads, but some black buttons. You want to follow the ears down the line of the ears down to the base of the snout, and you either sew or glue your eyes on there. Once you've done that, you're done. So again, check out the blog for the written pattern if you need any help, and good luck.